What's up, Nashville? This is Bo Beach with the Free Speech Podcast presented by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage. As always, the format of the show is to bring you the top stories from the past week, Nashville commercial real estate, business, and perhaps a little bit of politics and sports mixed in. I will tell you today's show is a little bit different. We're going to cover a number of small stories, right? So we've got 14 different small stories to present to you today. So we'll keep it moving. It'll be fast-paced. We're not going to do any kind of deep dives in any of them, but all information I think you will find valuable. First, we're going to talk about why I think the office building business will recover stronger and faster than the average market participant does. Next, I want to explain to you why the fourth quarter is the strongest quarter in commercial real estate for closing transactions. And the fourth quarter in 2024 is really shaping up to be an outlier, even stronger performance. And I'm going to walk you through why that is. Next, we're going to talk about the North Nashville Transit Center opening right before the vote on transit. I'll keep you up to date on that. A non-alcoholic bottle shop opens on the east side. That's an interesting idea that we'll discuss briefly. I'm going to introduce you to the triple tower midtown development called the Motley. Then we'll talk through the Hard Rock Cafe founder moves to Nashville and absolutely loves it. I'll share with you what he had to say. The Goodlettsville-based Dollar General takes a big hit after an earnings miss. Their stock price plummets 29% in a single day. Next, a Gulch developer pays $10.6 million or $300 per square foot for a Broadway parking lot. I'll update you on that. Rite Aid, it exits bankruptcy, right? Rite Aid, the drugstore, exits bankruptcy by closing 800 stores. I'll also update you on its competition and whether or not they are faring any better. Hint, they are not. The drugstore business is in free fall. Walgreens, for example, was considered the blue chip tenant for many years, upon which all other tenants were compared. And they've had a really precipitous fall from grace. I'll update you on that. A Southside apartment complex sells for a loss. It is very uncommon for an apartment deal to sell for a loss in Metro Nashville. I'll tell you that story. A 20-story tower in Midtown moves forward. I'll update you there. H.G. Hill, one of the area's longest and oldest developers and owners in Middle Tennessee, has a big start on transit center development, right? So with the transit center vote coming up soon, I think transit is a big topic, and H.G. Hill is way out in front. Two more. A two-building apartment development in Germantown moves forward. I'll walk you through that. And lastly, I'm going to give you an update on new car pricing. I think you will be shocked what's happening with the price of new vehicles in today's marketplace. Excuse me for a little sip of seltzer there. Let's get into it. Why I think the office building market will recover faster than everyone else does. Here's my thesis. I'm a firm believer the office sector will recover much quicker than people think. It's about supply and demand. Some office buildings will get torn down. Some will get converted to other uses. New supply has stopped, and we're not talking about just Nashville here. This is a nationwide perspective. Demand will increase as the labor market weakens and more companies see the value of having their people together. Add the increased demand for normal population and job growth, and you have the perfect recipe for improved performance and values, right? So office is a sector that is out of play right now, mostly due to COVID, the overreaction to COVID, this idea that everybody gets to work from home now, right? The work from home movement really decimated office buildings. It didn't happen immediately because obviously office building tenants are locked into longer term leases, usually 3 to 5, 7 years, even 10 years for some law firms. So those leases didn't roll over right away, but a lot of the effects of the work from home movement are now coming to fruition. And you're seeing tenants downsize, relocate. You've got a lot of pain in the office building sector now. I do think that we are going to rebound much quicker than everyone else does. So I think if you can buy office right now, and you've got the cash in the bank to carry that property for the next 5 years, there's going to be a lot of money to be made in the office building sector, and you don't hear a whole lot of people talking about it, right? Let's get into the next one, and I know this might be a little dry, so I'm gonna try to keep it quick, but why is the fourth quarter the strongest quarter in all of commercial real estate for actually closing transactions? As the calendar year draws to a close, an intriguing pattern emerges in the commercial real estate sector. A notable uptick in transaction volume during the fourth quarter. This trend, observed consistently over the years, reveals much about the dynamics of the market, investor behavior, and the cyclical nature of commercial real estate investments. The recent reduction in the 10-year Treasury, lowering mortgage rates, and the expected September Fed rate reduction are adding further fuel to the fire. The increase in commercial real estate transaction volume in Q4 can be attributed to several factors. Number one, tax considerations and year-end accounting. Companies and individuals often seek to finalize transactions by year-end to leverage tax benefits or adjust their portfolios before the new fiscal year begins. Number two, budget cycles and investment committees. As the year progresses, budgets for the upcoming year are solidified and any remaining funds need to be allocated. Market dynamics, number three. The final quarter is a crucial time for evaluating market conditions and making projections for the upcoming year. Investor behavior and market momentum. Institutional investors, which drive a lot of the activity in the marketplace, in particular, may accelerate their acquisition strategies to meet annual targets or capitalize on perceived opportunities before the year ends. This heightened activity is often accompanied by increased competition for prime assets, driving up transaction volume. This increased activity can lead to a spike in deals as the industry's key players aim to close transactions before year-end. Now, what are the implications for the market? Number one, price fluctuations. The spike in demand during the fourth quarter can lead to increased competition and potentially drive up prices for certain assets, influencing market dynamics. Number two, deal timing. Investors and firms must carefully time their transactions, considering both the benefits of year-end closing and the potential for heightened competition. Number three, market insights. Observing fourth quarter trends can provide valuable insights into market conditions and investor sentiment, helping stakeholders make informed decisions. Now, the Federal Reserve's decision to cut interest rate typically aims to stimulate economic activity by making borrowing cheaper. The expected impact on that is increased investor appetite. With borrowing costs reduced, investors are more inclined to pursue acquisitions or developments that may have been previously deemed too expensive. Enhanced property valuations. As financing becomes more affordable, property valuations can rise. Investors are willing to pay more for assets if they can secure lower interest rates on their loans. Market liquidity and confidence. Lower interest rates can enhance market liquidity by encouraging more participants to engage in the transactions, right? So this is the psychological effect of an interest rate cut that I'm always talking about. It's not necessarily the net reduction in interest costs as much as it is the psychological effect that an interest rate cut presents to the market. Increased confidence in the economic outlook bolstered by lower rates can further drive transaction volumes as investors feel more secure in their investment decisions. Psychological, right? Confidence. Sellers bringing properties to the market in time to take advantage of the expected surge may experience better than expected pricing. So as we're having conversations with potential sellers, right? So we are in the business of listing and selling commercial real estate. As we are talking to those potential sellers, we are pitching them on this idea that the fourth quarter is the best quarter to sell in. It expedites the process because those buyers need to close by year end. It has a possibility of increased demand, so more competition, so that the ultimate price you can get for your property is higher. And then you're going to have the psychological boost of the upcoming Fed rate cut, kind of putting some wind in your sails. So I would tell you that the fourth quarter of 2024 is an ideal time to list and sell a commercial property, and that's the same message we're sharing with all of our clients and potential clients. All right, that's probably the longest story of the day, so it'll be smooth sailing from here. North Nashville Transit Center opens right before the vote. What does that mean? The facility had been in the works for roughly 7 years. One transit center in North Nashville took 7 years to complete, which is unbelievable to me. Welcome to the future of public transit in Nashville, said WeGo Public Transit CEO Steve Bland. The future is air-conditioned, one of the several amenities the center offers that Nashville's more typical bus stops, a roadside shelter with a bench, do not. The center also has restrooms, free Wi-Fi, security, real-time route information, and public art. The future could be easier to reach if a majority of voters endorse Mayor Freddie O'Connell's transit expansion. The linchpin is a sales tax increase that would create Nashville's first dedicated funding for transit, something that all but 3 of the nation's other top 50 metros already have. Federal money is essential to these transit programs. Federal money covered almost half of the $16.9 million transit center. 7 years and $16.9 million for a single transit center in North Nashville. Crazy time, crazy money. The only way it's even made possible is Big Daddy federal government chipping in half. State money paid for about a third of the project, right? Metro will need the state's support for one of the most ambitious pieces of O'Connell's plan, creating lanes reserved for buses on 4 or 5 major corridors. The transit referendum envisions up to a dozen of these hubs around Davidson County. Each would look different, and many could involve commercial real estate development as a part of the project. Remember that part. Commercial real estate development around these transit hubs are a major part of this $3.1 billion upfront transit plan. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the H.G. Hill story, who's currently working on just that. Next, a non-alcoholic bottle shop opens on the east side. Alcohol-free bottle shop Killjoy, I don't know about that name, Killjoy, will soon open in East Nashville. It will open at 1100 Fatherland Street in September. Its previous location was in Wedgwood, Houston. That location will close. Quote, our new location will have more inventory, plus a permanent place to hang out and enjoy a cold drink. We are also still working on our future bar concept. So not only is this a non-alcoholic bottle shop, which we'll talk about, but they're working on a non-alcoholic bar concept, which seems, at least to me, to be a business plan that's a little bit more viable. This is Nashville's first business-free beverage shop selling alcohol-free wines, alcohol-free spirits, and alcohol-free beers. I didn't even know they had alcohol-free spirits, to be honest with you. And I've been alcohol-free for 9 years. So, as I hear about the culture in this country moving away from alcohol, which does has a lot of negative effects on people, both in the decisions that they make while drunk, but also in the obvious physical damage that alcohol does to you. Alcohol perceives your body as you've ingested a poison, and it goes into overdrive to get rid of it. That being said, I am no prude. If you want to drink alcohol, you knock yourself out. It's none of my business. I just decided it wasn't the right thing for me. So when I hear about these non-alcoholic bars and bottle shops, I'm very intrigued. I'm not the type of person that's actually going to go. I mean, I'm a father of 4 that's his time is already spent. I'm not going to hang out with random people and sip alcohol-free spirits, right? It's not my style, but to each their own. I wish them well. I followed this trend of moving away from alcohol, and I'm encouraged by it, right? But again, to each their own. You want to go out and get drunk every weekend, you knock yourself out. It's none of my business. Let's keep moving. Introducing the Motley, a triple tower midtown project will break ground next month. Vancouver's Bosa Properties has revealed the name and new details surrounding its development on the site of Midtown's former dairy factory. The Motley will build in 3 phases, with the first phase offering a 26-story residential tower with 326 units. The tower will offer 27,000 square feet of amenities, including social lounges, an outdoor pool, fitness center, and a dog park. The buyer and developer paid a collective $80.7 million for the land on which this project will be built in separate transactions in 2022. The land at 1401 Church Street was last home to the operation of dairy supplier Country Delight Farms, which Dairy Farmers of America shuttered in February of 2022. So the former dairy factory in Midtown, mega development that they paid $80 million just for the dirt. The first project coming out of the ground, 26-story residential tower, 326 units. More to follow on that. That will probably be a development that is ongoing for at least the next 10 years or so, if I had to guess. All right, let's keep moving. The Hard Rock Cafe founder, who was born and raised in Jackson, Tennessee, as a matter of fact, recently moves to Nashville, and he is hyping it up. Let's talk about it. Quote, Nashville is smoking. There's nothing else even close. Isaac Tigert, founder of Hard Rock Cafe and the House of Blues. Nearly 90 people move to Nashville every day. The city ranks 4th among the most attractive markets for real estate investment. Its tourist events continue to set records. Quote, Nashville is awesome. Tigert is a Jackson, Tennessee native. Since founding Hard Rock Cafe, he's lived in London, India, Paris, Malibu, and the list goes on and on. But he has not looked back since settling on Nashville as his home. It's a tiny, quote, it's a tiny little place with this explosive energy happening. It's really something, and that is why I feel blessed to be here. This is the perfect place for me. I could be anywhere in the world, but something drew me here. I'm here to testify that Nashville is awesome. Broadway is the new Bourbon Street. New Orleans has gone. Broadway is incredible, and they're having fun. They're not gambling in Vegas and losing their shirts. They're getting a little drunk, but it's exciting. Quote, one of the greatest things about Nashville is the traffic. Y'all hear that? Traffic. People should be worshiping the traffic. If there was no traffic, there'd be no new Nashville. That is the river of money and people moving in and exciting and everything. This is the most happening town, and the traffic is the lifeblood of it. It just shows you all these people are going everywhere, and they're on every street. Y'all should worship that traffic, right? That's interesting, considering the transit referendum supposedly is designed to address the traffic congestion that we have in the city around rush hour. My man from Hard Rock Cafe is saying we need to worship that traffic. Okay, so there's another look at it. Let's keep moving. Goodlettsville-based Dollar General takes a big hit. Dollar General experienced a record plunge in its share price. The Goodlettsville-based discount chain saw a more than 29% dip in stock prices after the company reported missing profit and revenue goals for the second quarter. Shares were down by more than $36 to $87. It marks the company's lowest share price since May of 2018. This is attributed to the softening of sales to customers feeling financially constrained. Do you think that customers feel financially constrained? Of course they do. We're all feeling financially constrained. But when it gets down to the dollar store level, now we're in trouble. The company reported a 20% decrease in net income, while net sales increased by 4.2%. Quote, with the evolving retail and consumer landscape in mind, we are taking decisive action to further enhance our value and convenience offering, as well as the in-store experience for our associates and customers. Interestingly, the company still expects capital expenditures to be in the $1.3 billion range, along with continuing plans for 730 new store openings, 1,620 remodels, and 85 store relocations. So Dollar General will keep their foot on the gas, right? You can't take your foot off the gas. You got to keep moving, even when you're missing projections, even when the economy is not cooperating, even when your customers, and you are at the bottom rung of shopping, there's nowhere cheaper to go than a dollar store, and your customers are still feeling constrained, financially constrained by the current economic environment. Man, am I hoping for a change in November. If this plays out the way it should, we get Republican policies in the White House, this is all going to start to change very quickly. If for some reason they find a way to allow a Democrat, or to cheat to allow a Democrat to win this election, it's only going to get worse. What a scary proposition. And as I've said before on the show, a Democrat victory in 2024 guarantees some level of civil war. How you define civil war is different amongst everyone else, but there will be outrage, there will be violence, there will be pushback, there will be great discontent. Anyone with a brain should be hoping for a Republican victory, preferably the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. But let's keep moving. A Gulch developer pays $300 per square foot for a Broadway parking lot. The developer behind a 3-tower Gulch project has just scooped up another site. Texas-based Endeavor Real Estate paid $10.6 million for a small Broadway parking lot at the edge of the Gulch. 0.81 acres, not even a full acre, for $10.6 million. The purchase comes a few months after Endeavor bought the neighboring site, which is home to Broadway's 7-Eleven convenience store and Exxon gas station, for a whopping $31 million. Endeavor Real Estate is leading the development of Gulch Union, a 3-phase mixed-use development in the Gulch. Gulch Union's first phase, office building, opened in December of 2022. The firm's 29-story residential tower called Pullman Gulch Union opened last month. The third phase of Gulch Union is in the design phase, with plans for a high-end hotel and residential tower. The 32-story tower is planned to rise at the corner of 12th Avenue and McGavick Street. The recently acquired properties neighbor this site. So they acquired this site to expand the land on which they have to build the third phase of their project, the third phase being a 32-story tower with high-end hotel and apartments. So another very, very high profile and impressive development coming to the Gulch. The Gulch, ladies and gentlemen, is a perfect example of how you can create massive, massive new housing by changing the zoning rules. So what they did with the Gulch to target development there is they made it possible for developers to go higher, to go bigger, to create more density. That immediately made all of that land extremely valuable, and the biggest, baddest developers landed in the Gulch, and they are bringing towers out of the ground, bringing hundreds and thousands of apartment units online, in addition to office and retail and hotels. So the zoning that is created by the municipality in which the land is located is extremely important. And as soon as that zoning changes and allows for more density, that land gets extremely valuable and you get more housing. So you want more housing, I would tell you the solution is more flexible zoning and less red tape in getting those projects out of the ground. If you can do those two things, those are both impediments imposed by the government. If you can get the government out of the way in terms of zoning and approvals, or at least make them flexible and faster, you can have more housing. There's no doubt about it. But the bottleneck is absolutely the government, and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. So this idea that the government is going to create all of this affordable housing and that's the solution. Listen to me. The government should not be solving problems that it's causing, right? So the government causes the problem, and all of a sudden they want to be the white knight to solve it by building their own affordable housing. How about we keep the government out of real estate, and the government just makes it easier for the private sector to create more housing? What a common sense solution to our problem that would be. Let's keep moving. Rite Aid exits bankruptcy by closing 800 stores. Pharmacy chain Rite Aid has emerged from Chapter 11 with what it described as a right-sized store footprint of about 1,300 stores, down from the 2,100 it had nearly a year ago when it filed for bankruptcy protection. The Philadelphia-based retailer completed its restructuring process and was now a stronger company with a focused portfolio, a more efficient operating model, and significantly less debt and additional financial resources. What does that mean? Through the bankruptcy process, the company said it has eliminated about $2 billion of debt. It has also received roughly $2.5 billion in exit financing to support the business going forward. Drugstore chains have been struggling, with not only Rite Aid, but also Walgreens, Boots Alliance, and CVS Health closing hundreds of stores. In fact, in June, Walgreens said it was reviewing whether to close about 2,150 underperforming U.S. pharmacies. Drugstore operators are troubled by shifting consumer habits, lower reimbursement rates, and heightened competition from rivals such as Amazon. Rite Aid is in 17 states. In connection with the Chapter 11 emergence, Rite Aid will operate as a private company. Its ownership will be transitioned to some of its creditors. All of Rite Aid's existing common shares were canceled as part of this reorganization plans. So if you own publicly traded shares in Rite Aid, they became worthless. The ownership of Rite Aid transferred to its lenders, right? Lenders are first in line. In a publicly traded company, the lenders get paid before the owners do, right? You got to pay your lenders back before you can pay the owners being the shareholders, right? So the shareholders get wiped out. The ownership of the 1,300 Rite Aid stores transfers to its lenders, right? It's lender owned now. It's privately owned by its lenders. What's more interesting about this, in my opinion, if you're in the commercial real estate business, there's such a thing called a cap rate, right? This is the return that you'll receive based on the rent that the tenant is paying and the price that you pay for the property, right? So a cap rate defines the return an investor receives from a leased property. And these cap rates are kind of set based on what is the blue chip cap rate, and then what is for example, on the other end of the spectrum would be like a local mom and pop shop. What are the cap rates being paid for those type of assets, right? It's all based on the strength of the tenant, the likelihood that the tenant will continue to pay its lease obligations throughout the term of the lease, right? So it's been perceived that you pay more for a Walgreens than you do a mom and pop leased property, because Walgreens is rock solid, will always make those payments. It's risk-free, right? Walgreens has always been the company that you've compared other net lease assets to. Boy, has that changed. Walgreens is no longer a blue chip company on which everyone else is compared. In fact, I read recently, and you'll need to fact check me on this because I don't have it in front of me, the Walgreens publicly traded shares are down 90% from their highs. As I mentioned, Walgreens is said to be reviewing whether to close 2,150 underperforming U.S. pharmacies. I mean, that is a huge, huge number. This has been a true fall from grace for not only Rite Aid, but Walgreens and CVS. They're all getting slaughtered. And why is that? A shifting consumer habit, lower reimbursement rate, and heightened competition from Amazon and Walmart. Let me tell you something. No one wants to go into a Walgreens. What a terrible experience. You're just going to line up like sheep in the back and wait your turn to be handed your medicine. It takes like an hour. Why can't I just push a button and then you ship them right to my house? Which is exactly what Amazon does. I'm not familiar with Walmart as much, but Amazon will simply let you click a button. You send that medicine to my house. I don't have to stand in line with all of these sick people. I don't have to be around all these germs. No one there is friendly to deal with. It's an absolutely awful experience that most normal people would like to avoid. So you wonder why the drugstore business is failing, because the experience is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And if I can click a button on my phone and have that same medicine delivered to me, I'm going to take that option 100 times out of 100. Let's keep moving. A Southside apartment deal sells for a loss. A South Nashville garden-style apartment complex that sold for $21.9 million in May 2022, so just 2 years ago, has now changed ownership hands for $17.8 million. The new owner of Residence of Woodbine Park is Dallas-based Silverado Interests. The seller was Austin-based GVA Management. The company seemingly is facing financial challenges. This complex opened in 2018, so it's actually very new. This isn't like some 40-year-old Class C property. I mean, we're talking about 6-year-old, like new development. The complex sits on 3.55 acres near the northeast corner of Nolensville Pike and Thompson Lane in the Woodbine neighborhood. At 92 units, the transaction is equivalent of about $193,500 per apartment. The 2022 deal was the equivalent of about $230,000 per unit. So in 2 years, the value of these apartments went from $230,000 down to $193,000 for a 6-year-old apartment complex. That is really unheard of in Nashville, and which tells me that this property was mismanaged by the seller, right? So the cash flow was mismanaged by the seller. They perhaps overpaid for it in 2022, but then probably most importantly, were under financial duress, and their lenders forced the sale of this asset so their lenders could be made whole. Whether or not the actual owners and their equity got anything out of the deal, we don't know. The equity was likely wiped out, but the lenders got their money back, and it seems to me that this mismanaged property was a forced sale with the lenders really pushing it. Let's keep moving. I've got a few more for you here. A 20-story tower in Midtown moves forward. Chicago-based LG Development Group is undertaking the project. The high-rise, which will stand 20 floors and include 396 apartments and 5,900 square feet of retail, with structured parking positioned primarily above the grade. In 2023, LG paid about $14 million for the 1.2-acre property, which sits adjacent to mixed-use tower Sky House Nashville. The building has been designed to offer 272 one-bedroom units, 119 two-bedroom units, and 5 three-bedroom units. At 245 feet, the future tower would be one of Midtown's 20 tallest buildings if standing today. Midtown is absolutely on fire. Midtown, Germantown are much more on fire than the downtown core is right now, and I'm not sure you could have predicted that 20 years ago. A lot of people, if they're not coming to Nashville to party, don't want anything to do with that downtown core. It's over the top. That's tourism district right now. So when these tenants have the opportunity to relocate to a neighborhood that kind of lines up more with what their ideal scenario is, they are relocating. They're relocating out of the downtown core. They're moving to Midtown. They're moving to Germantown. They're moving to Williamson County. They're moving. So there is a reshuffling going on, and I would say the downtown core is feeling the brunt of it. I think they're going to overcome it. There's going to be some short-term obstacles to overcome, but ultimately the strength of the greater market is going to pull the downtown core through this. In the meantime, Midtown and Germantown continue to take business from the downtown core. Let's keep moving. H.G. Hill has a big head start on transit center development, right? One of the biggest projects on H.G. Hill's plate right now is a transit-oriented development in Donaldson. The firm is rehabbing the Donaldson Station Transit Hub and creating around 15 acres of new mixed-use developments around it. Quote, we've got trains, we've got 2 major arteries, we got a greenway, and we got the airport 2 miles down Donaldson Pike. There's not a better location that encompasses everything, unquote. The city had already seen 2 failed transit referendums, but city leaders seem to be more hopeful this time around. The final scope of Nashville's newest potential transit expansion is a revamp that will feature close to 40 miles of lanes dedicated for fast-track buses on major corridors, as well as more sidewalks and bike lanes. The plan includes bus rapid transit or dedicated center lanes reserved for buses that would travel faster because they would not drive in regular traffic like they do today. 5 routes will receive that treatment: Murfreesboro Pike to the airport, Dickerson Road, Gallatin Pike, Nolensville Road, and West End Avenue. I've shared my opinion on the transit plan and why I considered a transit welfare plan that's going to do absolutely nothing to change rush hour traffic. I don't want to cover it all here. I think we should finish out the show. We'll talk more about the transit plan as we get closer to the vote. 2 more stories, very short in nature for you. A 2-building apartment development in Germantown moves forward. The Metro Planning Commission has approved a zoning update needed for a 2-building apartment development eyed for Germantown near the New Off complex on the Cumberland River. The project will unfold on a multi-parcel site with the main address of 100 Van Buren Street and interact with the Cumberland River Greenway. It will offer a pedestrian bridge connecting the 2 buildings and spanning the Madgeburg Greenway. Pennsylvania-based Toll Brothers Apartment Living will undertake the project, which will have 395 units. So that's 395 more residential units coming to Germantown. Toll Brothers owns the property, paying about $3.7 million for some of it in February of 2020. The company later acquired additional property for $4 million. To the immediate west of the site is a property on which Atlanta-based North Point plans a hotel. So they got into this site for 395 residential units for just over $7 million, which is a great price to be paying for land in Germantown. That's hard to do. So if you've got a land price of $7 million and you've got 395 units going there, you're doing real well in terms of your land costs. And lastly, let's talk about new car pricing, right? Interest rates are at decade highs. Vehicle prices near all-time highs. Monthly payments near all-time highs. So you would expect new car sales must be declining, right? Not at all. New car sales are up 8% from last year and 12% from the last month. This is really confusing people, right? The resilience of the American economy is bewildering. Like, where is all of this money coming from? It seems like people are tapped out. You would think that would be reflected in the amount and price of new vehicles being bought. But as of right now, it seems to me that the new car market is still slamming. You know, the price of new cars got really crazy during COVID. Anybody that willingly traded in a perfectly good car to get some type of new ego boost from a new car and paid the price they had to at that time, I questioned that decision making. You know, I had no interest whatsoever for overpaying for a car during COVID. But you would have thought by now, with the economic hardship that we're experiencing, that some of these prices would have come back down to earth. Or you would have thought buyers would just quit transacting, right? And you hear a lot of that, right? So on the used car side, the most affordable used cars available are now used electric vehicles. So people are getting into used electric vehicles not because they were someone that was concerned about the environment or ever aspired to have an electric vehicle. They're getting into them because those are the only ones they can afford. So it really is a conundrum right now. What's going on in this economy? You've got more credit card debt than ever before. You've got people living paycheck to paycheck. You've got many families are one layoff away from financial ruin, but still new car pricing and sales go up and up. It's really an interesting thing. And I hope we have a soft landing at some point, right? I hope the music doesn't stop and the economy just crashes as a result. I really hope we can get through November. We can get a change at the top of the federal government. We can get a change in the Senate, and we can start fixing all of the damage that has been brought to us over the last few years. And we can come out of this stronger, more resilient, with a smaller, leaner, more efficient federal government, less federal spending that is creating the inflation in this country, lower interest rates to get the private sector spending again. So we need to stop the public sector, the government sector, from spending so much. We need to replace that spending with private sector spending and watch how much better life gets. That is my hope for the end of this year. If we don't get it, I am so scared for all of us, myself included, my family included, my business included. We absolutely, desperately need a change in the federal government leadership. Washington, D.C. has absolutely failed us. This is the most important election of my lifetime. If we screw this up, we are going to pay the price. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.